I was going to go a little out of order just so I could free my laptop from the HDMI cord. I know Councilwoman Hoover at a previous council meeting asked if we could talk a little bit about immigration rights, just given the state of things. So a good local resource that I'm familiar with from my time at UC Law, the Immigrant and Refugee Law Center. One of the founders actually taught immigration law to me. So yeah, if you want to head to their website, it's right here. Oh, I can't read it from here, but it looks like irllawcenter.org. They're local. They do local clinics and stuff sometimes too, and can help you with your paperwork. But if you go to their Know Your Rights tab, they have English and Spanish directions. And then, of course, if you need other languages, there are other organizations that have more. I know the Immigration Defense League has a lot of different languages available, but this one's tailored to Norwood and Cincinnati, so I thought I'd start here. So just their table of contents. Of course, this is someone who's currently under an immigrant status. If you're a citizen, this is less relevant, but you can help your neighbors out. So the best thing for them to do is develop an emergency response plan, of course, know their rights, and then they do have information if you are detained. And then, of course, if you do have children that are U.S. citizens, you want to make sure that you have their power of attorney in order in the instance that, you may be deported. But this is a really great resource. It's very detailed. I'm kind of just going to skip through. Most of it is stuff that I think a lot of people are familiar with if you're as chronically online as I am. You don't have to let ICE agents into your home if they don't have a search warrant. That's one of the important ones. You don't have to open your door if they don't have a search warrant. But at the end of this, they have local nonprofits that can help you out, advocates for basic legal equality, community legal aid, and then, of course, Legal Aid of Southwest Ohio. That's Southeast, excuse me, Southwest Ohio. They're local. I'm familiar with their work a little as well. I interned there in law school, and they are very helpful. They do all they can to get people status here. So those are just some resources. I know this was put in by Councilwoman Hoover. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just another, I know that there's a local sort of grassroots program happening in Pleasant Ridge by a woman there who is, I believe she's an immigration attorney, but they're doing a lot of boots on the ground kind of work, including having a passport workshop for non-citizen parents of U.S. citizen children. They'll be doing, they're looking into doing a walking school bus for kiddos who are concerned about walking to school. There's going to be some art activism. So they're a little more on the down low. They're on Substack. I am over a certain age, so that kind of makes it more challenging for my brain. But for folks that know, you can find it's the PRISA
On Substack.
on Substack.
It isn't. Substack does have an app now too, if that's easier. If you go to the App Store and search Substack, you can download it.
It's an app.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was an app. I didn't.
It
Even
was
know
a
what
website. It was only a website there for a minute.
Okay. And I also would like to have a discussion about making some of the Know Your Rights cards available. And I wasn't sure if that was something that would be best done through council, if that's something that would be best done through like the DEI advisory board. But it's literally like a credit card size. It's red and it has both in English and Spanish or whatever language, Portuguese or Russian, I don't know. And it folds up nicely, so you can just slip it in your wallet, but it contains all the information on it. I don't know if there's anyone giving those away for free right now, but you can have them, you can download it and print it yourself.
I think
we just need red paper.
Yeah. I think we could do that through DEI and also through here.
Okay.
We could do both. Okay. And yeah, if you scroll to the end of this, they do have power of attorney sheets and then some, oh, this is freezing. Yeah, and include, This is stuff actually anyone should have prepared, I would say. But stuff like this, family medical information, for people who may be left here in the instance that someone is detained or deported. And like I said, there's a lot of good information here. And if you just want to reach out to this organization, they are very helpful. They do, like I said, they do a lot of local stuff. And they have a lot of other information. But I figured we could start there, and we can definitely talk about distributing the cards too. All right, now I'm going to free my laptop so we can get everybody else out here. What was my next thing on the agenda?
You want to do the
Oh, yeah, we
public
could do,
record
yeah,
policy?
public records. We can talk about that. Mr. Powers, did you just want to come up and talk with us? Sorry. I feel awkward if you want to sit up here, I don't care.
No problem.
He's like,
I'm
no,
good
I'm
right here.
You want to be at the podium? I've never had to talk behind it before, so that was an experience.
Oh, it's a great time.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
So I think I said this at council, but of course I trust you to do this on a case-by-case basis. I'm more worried about any future administrations in general.
Yeah.
I think it'd be better if we did have like a baseline income requirement to get these for free. And we're talking about the public records from the police department, body cam footage specifically, because Ohio recently passed that you can charge up to $75 an hour for pulling the footage and up to $750 for any request.
Correct.
So we are doing lower than that, which I think is great, $50 an hour, because I know some departments are really overwhelmed with these requests. So my suggestion, or what I thought might be reasonable, because I know we have like at my job for indigency standards, or actually I would even say like legal aid, it's 200% above the poverty line to get like assistance from legal aid. And I think for the public, to qualify for a public defender, it's 187.5% above the poverty line, which is between 185 and 200. I don't know why that's what they chose. So I don't know, do you think that would be a reasonable qualification to add?
I think that would be administratively very difficult for us.
Okay.
And it would probably result in us having a lot of personal financial information
That you wouldn't want to hold on
that
to?
we would not want to hold on to, but
Okay.
we would be needing to hold on to.
Okay.
We do not have anything like that in our records retention policy. And we get a lot of these requests, not necessarily from people who are
From
local
locals?
here.
Yeah.
We're getting them from other states.
From
We're getting
like
them-
YouTubers?
We're getting them from as far away as Texas. So, getting financial information from somebody in Texas to determine whether or not they're eligible to get this at a reduced rate.
Right.
In a way that would be secure.
Do you think maybe doing the poverty affidavit, like maybe something like that for local requests would be more? I looked at I think Youngstown is the only other municipality I saw passing.
Yeah.
Something like this so far.
I would expect that there's going to be a
More,
lot of
right.
this.
Sorry. Okay.
I was wondering if something like using a food stamp card or something that indicates
A
income,
presumption.
right? If that would be, here's a copy of that. Didn't we do that with the chickens? We did that with the chickens. What was the
I think
food stamp card?
if there's actually the language is in the administrative code and we use it too. There's a presumptive eligibility. An applicant is presumed indigent if they receive poverty-based public assistance such as federal supplemental security, SSI, Ohio Works First, temporary assistance, SNAP, things like that. So do you maybe we could do that for local requests? Or would that be discriminatory based on location?
Well,
I don't know.
That I'm not sure about. I mean,
Yeah.
I do see all that being as, relatively difficult for us to figure out, especially when public records requests can be made anonymously.
Right.
So if you're requiring somebody to show who they are, in order to receive a benefit.
For free?
I think that there could be issues with that.
Okay. Would you keep records though if it's like on a case by case basis?
Yeah, because that
For
would,
future?
I mean, that to me would very much document how we're running that program.
Right. So I guess what would be like what you're looking for if they want it for free?
Well, I don't think that we get, and I've brought or asked Lieutenant Matt Klingelhofer to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the types of requests we're getting. I don't think we're typically getting a lot of these that are, have a real vital purpose to them, that are falling outside of, regular discovery.
Okay.
That would be needed for somebody who's actually looking into a crime.
Right.
I would look to basically recommendations from the police department about situations, because there could be lots of situations that are more than just monetary. Somebody had a vehicle towed and there was damage to the vehicle.
Right.
Those are the sort of things that we would want to make sure they're free for.
Would you ask like for evidence in an instance like that?
What do you
Like, because I know you don't want to keep people's financial information, but if
Right.
you're asking for like proof they were in an accident, that might result in some.
Yeah, I think that the police department would be in a position where they could see if that person was in that accident or
Okay.
involved in that tow, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
But if we're looking at this as an income related instance, you're also creating the position where, maybe I want the records, but I would go and ask somebody who I know is going to qualify for that income restriction, to go
Right.
ahead and ask for that for me.
Which you can, yeah. Yeah. That's true. I don't know. I guess, what do you all think?
I'm behind the principle of it. I
Yeah.
think it's important that if somebody is in a potentially wrongful situation, that they have the ability to not be stopped by finances. But I hear the other side of the argument as well.
Yeah, and like I said, if this is a ongoing court case, if there's a discovery matter, that's totally outside of this. And so it would not fall into the public records policy. There wouldn't be an additional charge for something like that.
Okay. Right. Okay.
I do think it might be helpful if Lieutenant Klingelhofer can kind of give you a little bit more of the background. He served as our public information officer.
Yeah.
And so he was the one responsible for administering these requests in the past.
Would you like to come up? Thank you for coming.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address this issue. I will say I've been with this agency for 14 years, and I was here when we first got body cams. We were the first agency in Hamilton County, I don't know if you're aware of it, to get body cams. And there was a lot of reservation initially about that. A lot of skepticism and concern, that it would be used to go after officers and things like that. As a supervisor, I think body cams are an invaluable tool. I think what a lot of the public might have thought was they're going to find a lot of officers doing a lot of wrongdoing. What they actually found is a lot of officers are doing the right thing. And that's been great for developing public trust. Also, it's helped out quite a bit in fixing, maybe officer safety issues when we do our monthly, body cam reviews. Or we can pick up if they're not talking or acting professionally, we can address those things on a smaller scale. With that being said, for the last year and a half, up until the beginning of this year, I served as the public information officer for the department. And one thing I would like to say before I kind of get into that, there was a chief of police meeting for Hamilton County recently that Chief Sumner attended. All the chiefs of polices in all the agencies throughout Hamilton County, with the exception of one, have the inclination to implement some form of payment for the body cam request because they are getting inundated. And the one agency that is not is a much smaller agency that doesn't deal with the kind of volume that this city or some other cities happen to go through. Obviously, the more incidents you have, the more likelihood for something kind of crazy to occur, which is going to then, elicit more public records requests. For example, the first week I walked into the new role back in June of 2023, there was a national news media story. I became the PIO, national news media story hit within my first week, and all of a sudden I had agencies or news media across the nation, including Sports Illustrated, calling and asking for comments on this. Up until a month ago, we actually received another records request from a production company that wanted all the videos, all the interviews, and all those things related to that case. You're talking hours of interviews, a lot of redactions. I know because I had to go through and I spent countless hours doing that. And these are not for purposes to find wrongdoing or expose wrongdoing or things like that. These are commercial related requests. There's a lot of those. There's a lot of auto accident requests, like civil litigation that occurs, that you're talking maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lawsuit. Putting a small fee attached to that is just, the cost of doing business for these companies. They come with requests like, if there's a cost associated, let us know in advance. We have not charged anybody for anything. So these services are being provided freely. The reason why we landed on the $50 cost is that's our standard detail rate. That's what we charge, whether you're a lieutenant, sergeant, patrol officer that goes and works Rookwood for an hour or wherever. That's our standard rate. So I thought that would probably be kind of a fair assessment for a fee on this. In conjunction with some of those, like the case I just spoke about and some of the accident-related cases, there's a gentleman in Texas who constantly is requesting body cam footage for resisting arrest, use of force type incidences. He just within the last month did another records request for several different incidences. He only asked for the arrest records, though. In the past, he's asked for videos, which I've personally done and gone through and redacted. I don't know what the feelings are on news media, but some outside news media agencies outside of the state that are not local have requested because they hear something. There was an incident at the high school after a basketball game one day, and it was 5 minutes of video that I had to provide, but there was 50, 60 juveniles in the different frames that had to have their faces removed for their privacy. That 5-minute clip took hours to produce. So things of that nature, it's very inundated. And I remember I had a conversation last year because this was one of many roles I served in last year. As I've kind of established, I'm a big fan of body cams, but I had a conversation with Lieutenant Carl Fair about this when I was just so overwhelmed with some of the requests that were coming in. I was backlogged so much in some of my other duties that I was like, I told him, I said, I can see police departments getting rid of body cams because of this, because this is so inundating and it's costing us so much time and resources. And that is the last thing that me as a supervisor would want to see happen. But if police agencies across this country decided to do that, one, they're not paying the cost for the body cam. They don't have to store this stuff, and it's going to limit the amount of time and resources they're going to have to indulge into these public records requests. Now, that is something I would not like to see. It's an unintended consequence of this records request, which, I fully support open records. I believe in transparency. I believe in outing wrongdoing by police officers. But at the same time, we have to have some sensibility applied to this because one person can legitimately, if they wanted to, could just send endless requests in and completely inundate us to a point where we wouldn't be able to function and meet what we're required by law. So I think there's a sensible approach to this. At the end of the day, the safety service director would have discretion to waive some of them fees, I believe, if I'm reading the ordinance correct. He's an independent party outside of the police department, so there's no concern about bias there of us withholding things and deciding who would qualify for that. So I think that's a really good step into trying to continue to keep that open and transparent nature that we would like to have. You guys have any questions?
I have a couple. Thank
Sure.
you. One is, and this feels like a weird question, what does the guy in Texas want with the video?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I mean, they're not required to tell you, but I was just curious.
No, they don't even have to divulge who they are. I can only assume that maybe they're going on YouTube channels. Maybe he has. I can't assume. I don't know. There's a million different things he could want them for.
Okay. Might there be a way to distinguish between commercial and criminal? For example, okay. I'm answering my own question as I'm asking that because I don't need to divulge anything. But I was thinking, I'm sort of your mindset of principle. I absolutely appreciate and want folks who, and I will also reiterate, I don't think it's an issue with current administration, but trying to take care of, future Norwood if we don't have someone as great as you in 30 or 40 years when you decide to retire. But if there's a way that you could say, I want it for my own personal, for a criminal case versus I want this for a commercial, but I don't think I think that's the exact same issue.
Right.
Yeah, and to answer your question, it's really difficult outside of maybe like a legal request for like a traffic crash. Like I can automatically just come to the natural conclusion that that is going to be for some kind of civil litigation. Their business related commercial entity. Outside of that, people aren't required. And unless it's an individual that was directly involved, which it isn't always the case, it oftentimes is never the case. The person doing the requesting is not necessarily tied to that incident in any way, shape, or form. So whether it's for personal nature, whether they're wanting to look at it, for whatever purposes, they think something was wrong and they want to file a complaint, or they want to potentially pursue litigation or lawsuit down the line, or they're using it for commercial. I have no idea because, they're not required to divulge that information. They can ask for the media in any way, shape, or form. They can have it put on a CD and left at the PD. They can have it electronically delivered to an email that they could have just created that morning. I've had requests of all sorts of natures, a past internal investigation. No idea who did the request, no idea to what end, something over 5 years ago that had occurred. So we don't require it. I don't know if law we can make people divulge that information, as we can't even have them divulge their identity. Outside of somebody investigating a traffic crash that has law firm, attached, it's really hard to make that determination, ma'am.
Just out of curiosity, about what percentage is local versus Texas?
I mean, it would be hard to say because when you talk about public records, a majority of the public records boil down to, just like reports, which are a lot more feasible and easily to kind of go through and redact. There's still a lot of time, and depending on what people ask for, I had somebody request about 100 different arrest records, so that's a considerable amount of time. So without looking at it, I would say majority of the requests we get are probably crash related. And then I would say probably a small percentage would be local regarding a particular offense. They're kind of few and far between. A lot of them are people interested in whatever reason, because we do have some crazy incidences that do occur in this city from time to time. And it does extend throughout the country. There's a lot of interest in some of the things that happen here in this country. Like just the other day, we had a request for something that happened in 2022, and I don't even remember the incident. But it was a nonsense media. I have no idea where they're based out of, but we get a lot of that stuff. A lot of our records requests come through other police departments or government agencies that are doing background investigations. They want checks done on the people that they're hiring. That consumes a lot of them. But when we're talking about digital media, I would say majority of it is probably not local unless it's law firm related.
And then another question, it feels like overall this is certainly not a moneymaker for Norwood and is not even really cutting even, but it's reducing how much we would lose in terms of staff time by implementing this. Is that accurate?
I would say definitely would cut the costs. Like you said, it's not the profiteer from, and it's not. I think the biggest thing about it is you're going to maybe potentially stop some of the outsiders that continually ask for whatever end. And it just kind of ties up our resources and prevents us from doing, the local, focusing on those. And it was like safety service director. This has absolutely nothing to do with discovery requests, criminal arrests and things like that. The prosecutor's office files those. We send everything fully unredacted. They review everything. They share it with defense. And if it comes time and it goes to trial and it's going to be publicly displayed, it comes back. We go through, we make the necessary redactions so it's not publicly on display. And then they use it going forward in the trial. We don't restrict any access from that standpoint. Even after this law, if this ordinance passes, there will be no restrictions in that whole process whatsoever. Everybody deserves a right to due process. So we would never try to circumvent that.
Thank you.
I do want to touch on that just a little bit on the cost piece. So the cost of an officer, the software, the computer that we have, once you roll in, employee benefits, all of that is well in excess of $50 here. So it's not a profit. It's a less loss is the best you could say about it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming.
All right. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's like anything else. I can come to work tomorrow and get 2 calls, and that'll be that. I can come to work on Thursday and there can be 20 calls. The same thing applies with public records. Sometimes you'll go a week without anything, and some days you'll go 5 days in a row where you'll get some kind of request. It's really hit or miss. There's no rhyme or reason. You can't really plan for it. That's why, like when I was in charge of this, whenever I had a request, I was immediately working on it because I know you never know what tomorrow holds. So it would be really hard to give you an accurate number on that, especially because, like I said, a lot of the record requests that do come in are for paper copies and would not apply to anything that this ordinance would address. That is correct. No, those are usually always paper copies. They usually will just send some kind of request. Have you had this person lived in the city of Norwood from here to here? Did you have any contact with them? And usually that's just a quick look through the RMS, like a report management system, to see if there's any contact. And if there is, you just print off, public records copy of that report and then just email it to them. That's pretty much the same standard that we do most records requests. Those are pretty quick, but those are probably the bulk of the paper record requests we do get are like background checks. And we do get a lot of like checks for like businesses or business owners that have alcohol licenses or things like that. They have to go through, I don't know if it's an annual or biannual background checks. Like all the local businesses here, we have to do background checks for all those people for the state of Ohio as well. So we get quite a few of those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
It's honestly enlightening to know that you're doing this much work. I had no clue. So I understand the rationale for where this comes from. And I think it would, in general, this saves our police department, I think, a lot of time. So I'm for it, but I also, I'm for transparency, and I don't want people to think that this is obstructing their ability for justice or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern is that this was a lame duck bill. And this was an amendment of an amendment of an amendment of a lame duck bill. So there was not much opportunity when this was going through the House for public comment, testimony. This has not been held up to like public opinion in any real way. And not that we serve as a reflection of public opinion, but I would like to get more community input before. I think that the governor passed this with very little input from the public.
I believe none.
I believe none. You're correct. In this same bill, things like NIL restrictions were a part of it. The bill had very little to do originally with this. And I certainly do not want us wasting taxpayer money on people's YouTube channels in any way. But I also think that journalism is vital. And if there's no real way for us to differentiate between this person's requesting this to put it on TikTok and get their ad revenue, and this person is requesting it because they're a local journalist reporting on an incident, or this person's requesting it because it's a car accident that their parent was involved in and they want to seek out more. But I feel like I just have a lot more looking into this to do before I can confidently say one way or another.
Just out of curiosity, and maybe Mr. Powers, you would know this too. What happens if 3 media agencies request for the same incident that happens?
I think that was you would charge them the same amount, right?
Yeah, that is addressed in here. So they would be charged the same amount as the original. And I think I noted this at council last week, but I just want to reiterate it here that the emergency that was attached to this, that was an error. So There's no problem from the administration's perspective of having 3 readings, giving an opportunity for people to make comments on that. But I do want to say, as we kind of look at this, what it really comes down to is, what do we want the police department to be doing? Do we want them policing? Do we want them out interacting with citizens? Or do we want them responding to public records requests? That's really how I view it, because this can be absolutely overwhelming. We can get an angry resident who says, well, I'm going to call every day and I'm going to ask for a video. And if we don't have a charge for that, we're going to be spending more and more and more time on that. And we do suffer penalties if we don't make those responses. So if somebody started to call every day and make a request for body camera footage, we have an obligation to respond to that, unless we have a different policy in place. So there is a real liability there. We can be sued for that. We can lose damages if we don't respond to those appropriately. So I think that it really is a balancing test. I would definitely encourage us to move forward, obviously, and look at this. Now, the $50 threshold, that's set there because that's roughly what it cost us per hour, a little bit less, to produce those things. But, that is not a hard and fast dollar amount. And as we look for, ways that we can make sure that people have access to things that they need, I just want to make sure that it's not something that is too easy for people to drive through. And when I say that, I mean it's not an exception that kills the rule. So I think there's definitely some room to look at this and take public comment on it.
I had 10 minutes to that. So like he said, when there's a records request, let's say it's just an hour-long video, okay? It doesn't take me an hour just to create that. It takes substantially more because I have to watch every minute of that. I have to go through every frame and make sure that the privacy of the individuals involved is redacted, whether it's a driver's license number, social security, whether it's the victim, their face, the residence, phone numbers. There's a multitude of different things, and the law is always changing. Marcy's law kind of changed the ball game recently on a lot of that stuff. So you have to stay up current with the law, and you have to be very vigilant when you're doing these redactions. So an hour video doesn't take an hour's time. It takes substantially more. And if I make a mistake, and I am a human being, and I let some of that privacy information and it gets out there and it's exploited by somebody commercial, we are now subject to lawsuit, as the safety service director pointed out. I wrote a search warrant on a homicide several years ago. And after I was done with this search warrant, I had 3 people review that. And 3 people missed what I missed when I reviewed it. I took a template from a previous search warrant, did it for homicide, and changed the facts, changed the name, the dates, times, locations, all that. But in that, I missed it, and I put the defendant's name from a previous search warrant in my homicide, and I didn't realize it until after a judge had signed it 2 weeks later. I was rereading it, and I said, oh my goodness, I made a mistake. 3 people read that, okay? I went to the prosecutor, and there's case law that protects me. It wasn't an issue. That being said, there's one person reviewing these body cams and these redactions, whether it's me or somebody else. There's nobody else going over it because that would take way too much time. By not limiting the frivolous requests, we are going to potentially expose ourselves to further lawsuit and litigation because we are not perfect individuals and we make mistakes. And watching hours upon hours of video is very monotonous and mundane, and it can be hard. So that's just my suggestion. Alternatively, like the safety service director pointed out, what do we want our police officers doing? Do we want them doing public records? Well, I don't think anybody here would say we want our police officers doing that. We would rather have them out there on the streets engaging the public and keeping the community safe. I think we'd all agree on that. If we don't do something to maybe curb this, then potentially looking at hiring somebody full-time specifically for that. But there's a major cost that comes with that as well, and I understand that. But those are the suggestions I would make. Like I said, I just wanted to point it out that, we do have people that every time they deal with the police, they do body cam requests. Some of these people are very well known to you. If we deal with their neighbors, they do body cam requests because they want to know what we talk about with their neighbors. And this is every day, all the time, Whenever there's some kind of dealing, they will do a body cam request, and that's their right, and that's fine. But like Mr. Powers stated, this might stop some of that. It's nonsensical, and it doesn't serve any purpose other than some weird vendetta or problem with their neighbor. That's all I have, unless there's any further questions.
Thank you for coming and talking us through that.
Yeah. Where does this ordinance stand since we brought it to committee?
We did one reading, right? Yeah. So we have one reading done. So we have two more if we like it as it is.
In theory, it's on the agenda no matter what we do here.
Yeah. Yes. So.
I just have a random question, probably Mr. Powers. Does it have to be a police officer who does the job, or could it be a clerk? It seems like at Hamilton County, it's all officers that do that, but I don't know if there's a.
It could potentially be a clerk. I would not be comfortable with that arrangement because you need somebody who's familiar with not
The
just
police
those situations,
procedures
but
and-
who has a very fine understanding of what needs to be redacted and what does not need to be redacted. And as Lieutenant Klingelhoff pointed out, that does change quite a bit. Every year, the Ohio Attorney General publishes a book called the Yellow Book, which is the Sunshine Manual for the state. It details all the changes in the public records law, and they can be substantial from year to year. So having somebody stay up to date on that isn't actively working in either a law enforcement profession or a legal manner, I would be concerned about whether or not we're having the best person do that based on the risks of missing information. If we miss a social security number and that's out there now for somebody, there could be major liability from these
So it
things
makes
not being
sense that it
redacted
wants to
correctly.
be in that $50 tier because we want a well-trained person doing the job. Not that
Yeah.
a clerk can't be well-trained, but a specifically trained individual.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I looked it up just to confirm. There were no hearings on this bill. It was introduced to the House at 1 a.m. and then passed at 2:30 a.m. So the House also only had the language in the bill for an hour and a half before they voted on it.
I mean, I would certainly like to do 3 readings, which I know
Absolutely.
everyone is fine.
I don't think anybody is rushing it. I just feel like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
worth stating.
Um,
I feel like it seems impossible to me that it is a one or the other situation. I feel like there must be a middle ground here.
I mean, you mean charging or not charging? Or?
Yes. Or like we charge or we do nothing.
Yeah.
It seems like there has to be a middle ground there. I am grateful that we're doing 3 readings. That's all.
I guess our safety service director is the middle ground.
That doesn't seem fair either.
No pressure.
I guess, Mr. Powers, do you think, I don't know, do you think maybe, because the hypothetical Mrs. Bowling gave of someone wanting it for their parents' car accident, I don't know, not to test you. I feel like I'm doing a law school class with you right now, Mr. Powers. If someone requested, so in that instance, do you think you would be inclined to? I guess I'm just curious because, right, if you have the power to waive cost, I guess I want to know
Right.
what else you're looking for. I have no problem charging an out-of-state media company $50. They certainly have the resources for
Right.
now. But yeah,
I think I would have to look at the other circumstances around
Right.
that.
right.
If the person is looking to see if their parents' car got damaged in an accident and that
Or,
car is
yeah.
Bugatti Veyron, I would probably say they can still pay the $50.
That's a good answer. It depends.
But I do think there's some circumstances around
Right.
that, and it would be a case by case analysis. on
You wouldn't do hard and fast. I know we keep bringing up, is civil litigation, I know criminal discovery is covered, but is civil discovery covered?
I don't
Or would
believe
that be
that.
a public record?
Yeah, I believe that would be a public records request.
Okay.
And there are things like the city of Cleveland, their police department made a statement that they are not going to be charging their print and digital media partners. I don't know how they plan on going about that. They are not putting this into law yet. They feel like they need more time to review it, but they've already done an interview and said we're not charging the press. So maybe something like that. seems like a barrier to transparency. I mean, we all receive records requests often that sometimes do also take lots and lots of time.
Hours.
And certainly we are not paid to do that either. And that's obviously different. We don't have to go through and edit everything. It doesn't take as much time.
Yes,
but I
we
guess
do.
just determining what?
Yeah, we do.
Well, we do, that's true, but not in the same way. It's not editing video,
Right.
which is certainly more labor intensive and time intensive. It just seems if the authority is being given to us to determine where the line is drawn, it seems like a very serious consideration to me. I don't want to be a barrier to transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And putting a cost on transparency seems.
Would you like more time to like think of an amendment that you would like to add?
I mean,
or
I feel like between now and next council, I have enough time to do.
Okay.
I'm looking into it and then I don't feel like I need to. I think we can have a second reading safely.
okay, and maybe another committee meeting in between
Yeah.
if necessary. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder also just the fact that
Did
Oh,
we
we
not
did it?
have a first reading?
And we just submitted it to committee.
Well, then I feel
Thank
even
you so
better.
much.
What would we do
for
without
being
you?
our memory.
First meeting as clerk.
Everybody,
and
that's
you
our new
already have a
clerk.
better idea of what was going
That's our
on
new
than the
council
rest of
clerk,
us.
Jason Province.
So then I feel even better about it. We have enough time to
Okay.
discuss.
Okay, so we could, yeah. Thank you for that. All right, well, I guess we could just move on and keep this on the agenda if we have another meeting in between readings.
In the
If
law
you want
meeting-
more time,
law
because
committee.
frankly, at this point, I don't have any meaningful amendments I can add because I totally understand not wanting to keep people's financial information, and that was the only amendment I had in mind.
Yeah.
Was an indigency based. Mr. Kirk.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead.
Oh, I totally agree. The indigency is my only issue towards transparency with this. But Mr. Province, is this tabled in our committee? So it won't be on the agenda unless we do
Okay, we
something.
can add it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe what I would love is to schedule another law meeting for
Okay.
maybe before we have 2 weeks till the next council meeting.
No,
week.
it's
1 week.
We have 1 week.
Oh, we've already spent a week of the 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks, and now there goes a week. That's time for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly don't want to make our police department because I feel like this actually shed a lot of light on it for me because I did see some media coverage that it was based on, influencers, and frankly, I see a lot of animated shorts that are from police footage
Oh, I
on my
see
own feed.
body camera footage
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. And I'm like, what does this have to do with me? And this
Right.
happened in DC. Okay.
But the
So-
animated ones are pretty.
The animated ones are a little funny. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't want it to be our taxpayers' expense. So I feel like this clarified some things for me, and I agree with Mr. Powers. I understand why he doesn't want to keep financial records.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. So would you like?
I would
mean,
love
we
to
could
meet one
meet-
more time if everyone is comfortable with that.
Okay. Do you want to meet again? I mean, we could meet next Monday and ask them to put it on the agenda in the meantime. It's the day after Easter.
We can do that.
I'm sorry, Monday the 21st?
Isn't there
Yes, are you out of town?
finance
No,
or
I'm in
something?
town.
You're in town?
I've got a tree board meeting and we've got that meeting.
Okay, so you'll be out.
We've got small business before.
Well, would we
Yeah.
like to put it on the city council agenda and do one reading? That way there's at least an opportunity for public comment.
Sure.
And we can
Feel
take
good about
that
that.
into account
Yeah.
for our next committee meeting. I think would be good.
I'm into that.
Okay.
That works for me.
Okay. So we could at least do that. And then
What a reasonable compromise.
so then would we want to meet before council on
I
the
think we could meet after. Because
After.
that'll be a first reading. It'll give a chance for public comment.
you want to meet after council?
She means
After
night.
later that week.
Yes.
Got it.
Not that evening, please.
I was like, what?
Tuesdays are already
please,
really
no.
long.
Okay. Do you want to do like the 24th?
I've got a meeting.
You have a meeting? I mean, I could do.
We don't have to schedule this right this second.
Okay, you want to wait?
We can, but we don't have to.
I figured this would be easier than.
I say do it now.
Let's
okay.
do it. Can we schedule it at the end of this meeting so folks
Sure.
who have
Yes,
something
so
to
we can
talk
get Ms.
about
Ranch
don't
out?
feel like they need to stay?
That's a great idea.
You're
And I'm
our
sorry for
schedules.
keeping our police and Safety Service Director. Okay, Ms. Franzen, we can move on. All right. I know that you submitted backyard permeability or impermeability. What's the best impermeability?
I have looked up so many ordinances, and there's pervious, impervious, impermeability. Frankly, it's just so this is something that a resident had approached me, and I think probably a couple of other views about abuse. Oh my goodness. But right now, on some lots, especially in the student housing area, some landlords are just paving over the entire backyard for parking.
Right.
And, I understand you want parking for your residents, you want parking for your tenants, but that really has a significant impact on
Flooding.
stormwater drainage. So one thing that other municipalities and cities do is put a maximum amount of impermeable surfaces. So that includes the house itself, driveways, garages, patios, pools, anything that does not allow access of water to the ground to soak in. Some municipalities is as low as 10%, which seems crazy to me. I think that's with much, much larger
More
lot
land.
sizes. For our smaller lot sizes and kind of for cities similar to ours, I saw anywhere from 40 to 60%. So my kind of suggestion was like 50%.
Yeah.
Which kind of splits the difference. And you could do the whole lot 50% or just the backyard 50%. It might be easier just to do the whole lot. That way you don't have to split hairs like, is this backyard? Is this
front
side yard?
yard.
Like, what is a backyard really? So I know I sent you some language that was like just a
Yes.
couple bullet points.
I just forwarded it to you three. Sorry, I should have done that sooner.
So yeah, there's a bunch of, I put a bunch of different ordinances in there. The first one was one I thought was best because it was simplest. You don't have to like calculate, like literally some of them are like, you have to calculate the amount of rain flow and by square foot of permeability. I'm like, we just do a flat percentage.
This is a random. Okay, so it's 50% of all yard.
50%
Of
of
yard. I think that's. I guess my question. Well, because driveways are in the front yard. I guess.
Yeah.
Never mind. I was about to be like,
Some
would this
driveways.
mean?
My driveway's in my backyard.
That's true. In my mind, for some reason, I was like, what if someone turns their front yard into a parking lot? And then I was like, well, I'm sure we have stuff for that.
We actually do because people
Yes.
have complained about not being able to do that in their front yard.
Cool.
So this would be just a way to still allow people to have parking. Like we don't want people to just not be able to put in extra pavement if they have cars.
Right.
But also not pave the entire backyard and then cause flooding issues for their neighbors because I mean, we're a small city, we're small lot sizes. Anything that you do does have an impact on your immediate neighbors and the street, as we see with Elm Avenue. So, yeah. That's just kind of my thought as something that we could do as council. And I'm sure perhaps the law department would have an opinion on the feasibility. And then whoever, I guess, building department would be the people who would enforce that. That would be good to check with them and see kind of how much time that would take if that has been an issue. I feel like it's not nearly as much of an issue in most places, just really in the student area and with just some of the people that buy the houses to turn into apartment dwellings. And to be clear, this would be for residential zones, not commercial, not industrial, residential.
I guess.
Because we have like La Rosa's here. La Rosa's has a parking lot.
Right.
I would not want to limit them to 50%.
Right.
It's a different type of zoning restriction.
I think you guys might know better than me. We have three, right? R1, R2, R3.
Yes. So-
Do we have ones that R2 and R1 are strictly residential, right? Oh, look, I forgot we had our law department back there. Cyrus was blocking you guys.
We've got R1, R2, R3, we've got RMX, there might be another one. But the Norwood there was a provision that limited the amount you could pay the backyard, was in the zoning code until, I'm going to guess 15 years ago, maybe, when we redid the residential aspect. It was a complete like rework of that, and that was taken out. And so I would absolutely support council sending a resolution to the planning commission to look at limits. There's a house on the other side of my block behind, not one house, I'm sorry. There's property on the other side of my block behind my house where there were 3 houses in a row. And
That were perfect.
every tree came down, everything, like it all came down. And now it's this huge expanse of concrete behind 3 houses. So, And it's, yeah, I'm all in favor of this, but that we did. And so it's definitely a workable thing that the planning commission, the idea of like, what should the percentage be and the impact on the parking in the front yard or the side yards and that kind of thing is something that the planning commission works through. So the mechanism here is to pass a council to pass a resolution
And send it to the
referring
planning
it to the
commission.
planning commission to do, and you can start with a 50%,
Okay.
permeable backyard kind of thing.
Can I ask questions? Which may be obvious, but I don't know. I don't work for the building department. I am assuming that this would not be retroactive, it would just be on new permits. Because like my house
Yeah.
is a great example of this. I have not touched any of the exterior of my house since I bought it. My yard is way more than 50% paved. My backyard is almost entirely paved. The other question is, are we talking poured pavement or are we talking pavers? Because my backyard is a patchwork of some of those things. So certainly the pavers were probably never permitted, but they are, I would not consider them permeable because they are so tightly joined and they are caulked between them, which is lunatic behavior. I don't know. Don't ask
Literally
me. It's how I bought the house. I've pressure washed most of the caulking out, but for things like that, like how is that being, do we know how we would go about if someone just covers their entire backyard in pavers?
If it's there already, then this wouldn't affect
Yeah,
it.
there's nothing we can do about that.
If somebody adds it, goes in, I'm just going to pave my backyard, and then the building department finds out what they will come and issue orders against it. And then it comes down to a question of what the definition, because there are definitions in the code of different surfaces. So it's like, is it, asphalt,
gravel
concrete? Is it paved? Is it paving? So like the restriction was no more than, I think it was 25% maybe of the backyard to be paved. And there's a definition of paved. So, but
So we'd have to
one of the
write that
newer
into the
questions now is like, well, what about the?
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. I'm sorry we kept you so long.
That's right. Right.
Thank you.
But one of the policy questions is, well, what if it's the pervious so that water will flow through it? Is that
Like
a
the
part of what,
irrigated
does that
pavers
count
or
as
whatever?
not? Well, pavers would be one, and then, but they make kind of
They make
paving.
pervious
that is-
pavers
that the
now.
water will soak through a driveway, like a solid paved driveway parking lot.
So it may be
Will soak through,
beneficial
and
to look up definitions of
and that's
impervious.
that's the kind of thing. But I would I think council could just do, we would like a limit of no more than 50% of paved rear yards kind of thing, and send that to the planning commission.
And they can figure out what definition they want for.
That
Right.
seems reasonable.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's certainly a possibility.
They're the
That's
experts.
the way to go,
Yeah.
yeah. And whatever you send, they may not actually be in agreement with, and they'll probably tinker with it anyway,
Yeah.
Great.
you know.
Let them tinker.
The president of the planning commission
How
is
long
gone
do you
now.
left,
think that
yeah.
process would take?
You're going to change the zoning code. It's at least, I'm going to say it's like it's probably closer to 6 months, all told. You take it, it's at least 3 or 4. If you're going as fast as you possibly can, it's 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Because you need the public hearings, you need and then they approve it and it comes to council. Council has to do the public hearings and with all the notice that goes into it. And then you can add in time for figuring out what the language might be, of drafting, whatever that would be, and then their discussion of it. So it's not quick.
Okay. I sent you and Mr. Gary what Mrs. Franzen had sent us, and I think it's pretty reasonable. She sent at the top. She put her favorite example.
So you sent me 20 different examples of language. Is that what you did?
No, the first
Okay,
one
all right.
is the number one.
Okay, all right. I'm just checking.
I'm not trying to torture you, Mr. White. Okay. So I apologize. I don't have my agenda up and all my tabs. Oh, here. Give yours up. I went out of order. Okay. Yes, we can move on to item 4 on our agenda. Cash to crypto ATMs in Norwood. This is something I've been thinking about bringing to council for a while. Basically, I have no strong feelings on any capable adult who is interested, savvy investor who wants to buy crypto. That is entirely their business. I was looking more at states like Minnesota and Vermont, who in conjunction with the ARP have passed what I think to be reasonable regulations on these ATMs. So the issue with the ATMs that we have found, the nation has found, that is that these scammers, very sophisticated scammers or unsophisticated scammers, they are calling our residents and basically kind of working them up, and then, or telling them, they need this to get their child out of jail, what have you. They go to these crypto ATMs, they put the cash in, and some local police, there's not much you can do after the cash is in, and once it goes to someone else's crypto account, is my understanding. Actually, just very recently, a resident in Delhi put $41,000, I believe, over multiple transactions into a Bitcoin ATM. She was 73 years old. Luckily, her local police department got in touch with our BCI, and they stopped most of those transactions. They were able to get her $35,000 back, which she's still out $6,000. But that's certainly better, I think, than most people get. Frankly, I had a loved one subject to one of these scams. Very smart. I have coworkers who have, by the skin of their teeth, stopped their relatives from going and putting cash in these because they're told they have a warrant, and then they luckily call, or what have you. These people give like badge numbers that you can, all the information they give their victims is some stuff you can Google, which of course, when you're worked up and scared by what's been told to you, you don't realize they could have just Googled it as well. So my concern, of course, my concern is scams. I have some numbers. So we have our victim in Delhi who got her money back. The ARP, actually through the FTC, they pulled the numbers. Investment scams were the fourth most reported kind of scam in 2024. They were also the most lucrative, with $5.7 billion in reported losses, up from $5.6 billion in 2023. And it says the investment-based scams often involve the bogus cryptocurrency investments. So, of course, if you're a victim of a scam, you can report this to the FTC, you can report it to local police departments, and luckily, I think our state attorney general is getting involved, and BCI is stopping some of these transactions. But some of the common sense regulations that AARP has suggested, and actually that Minnesota and Vermont have passed, involves daily limits or limits specifically for first-time users of the machines, which I think could potentially stop quite a lot of scamming, because there's certainly a big difference between putting $10,000 versus $1,000 or $2,000 into these machines. Now, who we would assign to regulate that, I do not know. If you are curious, I think we have about 12 of these ATMs in Norwood, which is a 3-mile radius. There's a lot more in Cincinnati. And of course, my view of it is, if you really want to buy crypto, I don't think this stops you. If you want to put more than $1,000 in cash into an ATM, you could go to other ones, I believe. I don't think that would stop you from doing, and I think you can buy Bitcoin at most of our Bitcoin ATMs. I've only looked at 2. The one, I know there's one in Cappies, and actually there's one in Ameristop that I went and looked at today. And to be fair, these machines do issue warnings. But I can just speak anecdotally. When my loved one was suffering through this, they kept them on the phone all day. And it actually, to me, sounded similar to someone who may do a forced confession to a police officer or something. They were like, I just wanted to be done. I had been on the phone all day. They had me scared all day long, telling me I needed to do all these different things. And then, of course, once the money was out of their hands, they quickly realized what had happened. So I think if we could try to impose a limit, I would rather us try something than do nothing, is my view. And in fact, I would love if other municipalities or even the state decided to do some of this common sense regulation. I think it's common sense. But it seems like no one in Ohio is really trying this yet. So we would be pioneers, which also creates a lot of difficulty. So I was curious how everyone felt about that. That's my whole little, that's my little book report.
So I know that the one that's at, we talked a little bit about this, and the one that I'm the most familiar with is the one that's at Walgreens. Most, I think CVS, Walgreens
There's the marathons. Both
have
marathons
these
have
All
them.
Point brand ATMs. So I only happen to know about this. This is totally anecdotal because I was a banker and the bank that I worked for was a part of the All Point network. So all that is banks partner with this ATM company that is not a bank, and they, I'm sure, pay some sort of fee to them, and it allows their banking clients to use those ATMs as though they were a branded bank ATM.
Are
So
they
don't charge
insured?
fees. So they're FDIC insured, I
Okay.
think. I'm fairly positive. So I worked for KeyBank. KeyBank is regional. There are very few locations in Cincinnati. So they are part of the All Point network, so that if you live somewhere far away from a bank, you can still deposit cash, take out cash, whatever, without being charged a fee at those. They do also, unfortunately, have crypto as an option. That is new. They did not used to do that. In my time, and again, very anecdotal, in my time as a banker, I saw a lot of people get scammed in this way, and with gift card scams and investment scams. And especially in the older demographic, it was rampant. And the scammers know how to make them seem very urgent, seem very professional. They are pros. So I know people hear that and think like, this can't really be happening to people, but it is. And if I saw it at my small regional bank, I promise you it's happening everywhere. I think folks who are genuinely interested in investing through cryptocurrency, who have an understanding of the risk of that, have many, many ways to access it that are not an ATM and a Walgreens. And so I don't feel like it is really restricting anyone to.
Yes. And I don't want to penalize businesses either. I know I spoke to one business owner today because they get rental fees for these ATMs being in there. And I certainly don't want to, I'm not suggesting a ban. I don't want to take away any income from local businesses. And of course, there are sophisticated consumers who do use these, who do cash to crypto. But of course, I would just like a little regulation to try to stop some scamming. So I'll just say, I think Vermont and Minnesota are the only two states who have passed anything. So Vermont and Ohio does require them to register in the way a bank ATM would. But again, the issue is that they're not, while they're regulated in that sense, they are not FDIC insured. So any fraud that happens, like there's no insurance company covering that. So they really do just say like, too bad, so sad that it's crypto, it's gone. Even though, of course, my lawyer brain was just like, open the machine, get the money out, which of course would result in a loss to the crypto business. So of course they don't do that. That is not part of their policy as far as I know. But Vermont they require them to register with the state, which like I said, we do. And Vermont has the daily transaction limit of $1,000, no matter who it is. Minnesota's law is that, again, I don't know how we would enforce this, but their crypto ATM users, they can get a refund for losses due to fraud if they report it within 14 days of the transaction, which I would love to do. I don't think. BCI is the only person I've heard of in Ohio who's able to do that. So I don't think we have that power. But, and then Minnesota also, they have the new customers are limited to a $2,000 transaction limit. So I didn't know if our brave law director or assistant law director want to chime in on any, I guess the building department could check these, but I don't know how we would test these regulations would be my issue.
And that would be the thing.
Right.
When I first, the email, hey, we wanted to talk about this. I thought we were just talking about banning them in the city of Norwood.
Right.
And that is maybe zoning, but I think that there's, looking at the Minnesota one and the New Jersey, that kind of a language can be done if you wanted to limit to what it is.
Yeah.
I just, for me, I'm trying to figure, because I don't think there's a concern with, I want to go and buy crypto.
No, I'm fine with
Or
people
I
doing
want to
that.
cash in my crypto.
Yes.
If you have crypto and I want to go to the machine and cash it. It's the ability to send it to somebody else. And that differentiates it from an ATM too, because I don't think you can, maybe utilities, I don't know, but it's not like I can send it to Uncle Joe. I can't go to the Fifth Third bank machine and send money to Uncle Joe's account. I don't think. I mean, I could put cash in.
I don't
But
think
I mean, I just don't know. And that's the thing. But if we're going to talk about putting limits on or an ability to, with your credit card, you can stop a fraudulent transaction.
Right.
You can dispute a transaction. Those
We
kinds
don't
of
have
things,
that.
that's way beyond
Yes.
what we have. And I am not, and I would presume that our ability to regulate financial transactions at that level is probably preempted by the state
Okay.
and maybe the feds.
Do you think a moratorium might be warranted?
You could pass a moratorium on any new
New
ones going in.
Yes.
And then you get to the question of what's being defined, what you're defining.
Given, yeah, that's
You
true.
know.
Given that we have 12 already.
Right. No, I think
Per
that-
Google Maps.
Right. It would be, in theory, you could do like, can you send other people money? And that's just like opening up the menu on the machine, I guess. But like beyond that, if you get into any of the financial transaction aspects of it, that's really hard
Right.
to do. And if they are violating, and if somebody is running a scam, then it's, I know the police can
Could we ticket
investigate
them?
that, but it takes an
Right.
awful lot of effort to do it.
Right.
To get to anybody's record. So,
And I guess what happens if like US Bank starts offering this as a convenience option on their ATMs?
Right.
Do we tell them they can't? I looked it up. I actually do not think that Allpoint is insured. They're owned by some network.
Right.
Not that they're the only ATM that's doing it. I just know we have multiple of them and they do offer it.
You're more familiar with that.
I just also use that ATM sometimes because my bank is not nearby. Okay, it's in Hyde Park, but that's much closer to me than
It's
Hyde
too
Park
far.
is.
and also looking at the state Minnesota things, it's like, oh, you have to give them these warnings. And I'm like, nobody's reading 2 pages of warnings.
Well, and I went and clicked
anything.
through the one in Ameristop.
I do. Tim might, but nobody else. You know what I mean? Nobody else
Well,
does.
right. And if you've already been scammed all day long, like I said,
Yeah.
you just want to get off this phone call and think you're safe, essentially. Yeah. Or even if it's a short call where you've been scared into thinking something bad
Maybe
is happening.
Right.
Something more education oriented that we could do,
We could do that.
just like public awareness.
I can't,
what these
I'm very
things look
inclined
like.
for a moratorium if we could figure out the definition that we want to use.
Yeah, and there's a few in
Yeah.
the different jurisdictions.
Because I know Vermont did it for a year before they passed their full legislation. So maybe, and I mean, we did it with vape shops. I think I would argue this is just, to me.
I would say it is just as bad.
Yeah.
I think it is more complicated to
Yes.
enforce.
I don't know, maybe we could look at more language for definitions. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's
I just wanted to present.
if you want to do that as far as putting one in and figure out
Yeah.
what is okay and what's not.
Since we're having another meeting so quickly, I can look.
I also think that this might be worth bringing the state's attention to. I mean,
I'm
I
not
think
going to lie. Part of the reason I wanted to do this is hope that a larger municipality may follow suit.
Sure. Someone who has more, I mean, I think the state mandating it has much more say in enforcement capability.
I don't know how motivated our legislators are at this moment
Right.
to do something like this. So I'm hoping maybe,
with you.
I don't know, a municipality like Norwood and then maybe a larger one like Cincinnati, acknowledging that there is certainly a problem with these.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, this would be symbolic because if you're getting
Yes.
the thing, it's saying, okay, you can't do it.
Somet-
You need to go to You need to go to the one in Oakley or in Evanston.
Exactly.
Right. It's not like it's.
But I don't know if our scammers are local enough to figure that out. So that might help.
Like, yeah.
We may help a
But
little.
we'll pull up Google Maps here. Where's the
If we
closest
stop
and
one
it'll be-
person.
But also, if it brings people's attention to it, if
Yes.
it brings it to any larger municipality or to the state level, then that is helpful.
Yes.
I do not mean to demean
No.
this as
No.
a concept or the work.
This
that
is
we
very
do.
much my little torch in the dark
It's
moment
important,
here.
I think.
I am not anti-crypto, but I'm certainly anti-scam. So
And again, I just like, yes, there's convenience to having crypto in an ATM, but it's not like it's the only way. for
I have
people who are
never,
investing in crypto.
no one I know in my life who has purchased crypto has ever put cash
Done
into an ATM.
I'm certain they charge some sort of fee.
They do. Actually, I've done so much reading on AARP's website. If anyone's interested, they have so many articles. But yeah, some of them are actually limiting the fees that these ATMs can charge, which I guess is probably just a way to make the ATMs less lucrative. So I know in California, they limited it to 15%, which I can't believe they were charging anything higher than 15%. And then I believe I think maybe Arizona or another state, don't quote me, but they had limited it to 3%.
That seems more reasonable.
Yes.
Looks
Yes.
like there's some stuff happening in the states, Washington State and
I know they had one
Colorado.
presented. Yeah.
Both have some House
You sent
bills
that to me, I believe.
that they're
Washington
working
State.
on.
Maybe.
House, what is this one?
I was looking for bans.
Yeah.
Regulations.
Well,
Get into those.
Mr. Moore sent me one other city council who was going to try to do this. It was in Minnesota. So then the state passed it. They didn't have to worry about it.
What do you think about, do you think AARP has like someone who we could reach out to?
I could try.
If they've already done legal work with other municipalities or with states to.
I haven't seen anything on the books, but they've definitely, they even within their own, releases about these say like with our guidance. So
Yeah.
I know they help Vermont and
That
Minnesota.
might be really helpful to see if they'd even
We have a
work
local.
with us on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Although
At this
we don't have
point,
to
yeah, I
reinvent
do.
the wheel.
I think limitations would be symbolic because I don't know how we would enforce those.
There's value to that.
There
You
is.
can't have a machine in Norwood that does this. I mean, that
Right.
would be, like, the putting limits on
Right.
transactions or fees or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Which again, and the one business owner I spoke to, he was like, I do like getting the rental fee, which I totally understand.
Which also, I mean, I think
Yeah.
to some degree, if it's something like an all-point ATM, which serves like all of these different purposes,
Mm-hmm.
it seems feasible that they would have a way to disable or remove that feature.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not an ATM. I was the designated ATM person at my bank, but that does not mean I did any software or anything. I did not.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right.
I was also thinking, sorry, in terms of like the education piece about putting a sign up that said, warning. or-
Beware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could the building department check that Norwood has put a warning up, maybe? Like, or if they put the machines in, there must be a warning from the city that says
Like
this.
selling cigarettes.
Call your youngest grandchild and ask them if you think this is real.
I mean,
Sorry, that was a little discriminatory.
Tobacco.
But also,
tobacco
yeah,
ordinance has.
Yes.
Surgeon General.
Things, it has requirements in our ordinance. So-
Well, and I think the FDIC, not FDIC, excuse me, Consumer Protection Financial, CPB, whatever it is. That's being dismantled, I believe, at this moment. But who, used to focus on getting taxpayers their money back that they had been taken from. They had a warning on their website, which I haven't looked to see if it's even posted anymore. But they used to have a warning that they would put regarding crypto ATMs. So there are other agencies that have like language we could certainly
That
borrow.
seems like an immediate solution that would at least help to mitigate damage.
Yeah.
I would love to look into that with some urgency and then sort of slow down and see what we can do.
I think a moratorium is very feasible.
I think you could roll those into one.
Yes,
I
a
think you could do
moratorium and the
moratorium
posting.
The required posting as one ordinance.
Yeah. Which again, they do, I concede most of them do have prompts being like, don't send money to a stranger. But I mean,
But
how
when a
many of us
stranger's
just
on the
click
phone
sure
with
on
you,
privacy on, yeah.
It's not a stranger, he's the officer.
He's been on he's a DHS officer. I've seen his badge number.
Ah.
They
There's a-
do say badge numbers.
I was going to say in Omaha, Nebraska, a group worked together to make sure they have every Bitcoin ATM has a scam warning sticker.
There you go.
So maybe we could do something along those lines. I just wanted to present this.
No, I love this.
Mr. Kelly, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Do you want to come up to the podium? So,
I also went today to Cappy's and decided not to actually make a purchase because it was expensive. But walked through the prompts and there are a lot.
there are, yes.
Of prompts. I mean, more than a sticker, like way more than a sticker. There are also limits, tier limits. If you're over 900, you have to call them.
Okay.
There appeared to be a lot of safeguards in place.
Well, that's good.
Already.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage you to talk to somebody that knows about crypto before, to understand how things work, because I can go to Cash App right now and do the exact same thing that the ATM does in less
Right.
time.
This wouldn't stop all of it, right?
It literally is a pebble in the water that it is. It's a lot. It's time that we're spending on something that may or may not be a problem. I understand people get scammed every day. I had a family member a couple of years ago here in Norwood get scammed through gift cards, where they went and purchased gift cards with cash and
Then gave the codes.
gave the codes.
Yeah.
So are we also going to look at Kroger and say you can't sell gift cards anymore because this is a way that people are getting scammed? I mean, and then you say, well, people use gift cards. Well, you don't have to have gift cards. Like, so I would make the same argument.
Right.
Where you don't have to have a crypto ATM.
Right.
But I should have the freedom to transact as well as a citizen. So that's.
I guess my question, I mean, again, I don't think the limits are feasible for, for us to enforce anyway. Would you think a $2,000 cash to crypto, like a daily one, would be reasonable?
There are already limits.
Right.
Kind of built in. And the main reason that from my perspective, that somebody might use one of these is that on the lower limit side, there is not a requirement to provide identification. So like if somebody values privacy and wants to purchase crypto without KYC, know your customer, like regulations for banks, there are some smaller limits. And I personally think that that's to some people a valuable and like we should have the right to privacy.
Oh, yeah,
From that perspective. So I would like to say there is a valid use for these. It's not like it's, they're only for scams. And it appears like I was actually shocked when I went to try to transact at how many prompts and how much information. I mean, they walk people, do you know this person personally? Like, and ask a series of questions. So I just would challenge the effectiveness of anything and I think the state is probably like
the proper method.
a proper method.
I agree. I would prefer that they would be doing this. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my
Two
take.
cents.
Thanks.
That
Yes.
is good insight. Thank you.
Yes. And to be clear, I do not want any sophisticated purchasers of Bitcoin or what have you to be limited. But I would, yeah.
I don't know how, I know that the gift card thing is a problem, but the Bitcoin is, I think, more targeted at vulnerable populations than the gift card is.
Also, I think some credit card companies would refund you for that. I would hope. If you say it was a result of fraud.
The Bitcoin, it's like 120 million.
Yeah, Bitcoin, you get nothing.
In 2023. So it's not an insignificant.
Right.
If they spend the gift cards, there's no recourse.
Oh, not even through your own credit card company? Okay.
And I will say, at some of the Krogers now, I have seen signs that say like,
Do not send these.
and like, I think they just say like something about being cautious. I don't think they say like, here's a scam that's going on. Don't do that. But I feel like I've seen, maybe it wasn't a Kroger, but I've seen somewhere near gift cards that they do have little posted signs that say like,
Which if that stops two people,
Be smart with gift
I would say
cards.
is worth it. Sure. Sorry, Mr. Gary?
I talked with Norwood Police Lieutenant Kelly Garner and asked her, how much of a problem is this with the ATMs? She said, well, if they get to the ATM point,
It's too late.
it's too late.
Right.
Yeah. But she also said there's not a ton of this,
Within
at least
Norwood.
within Norwood. Yeah.
Okay.
At least reported to them.
Right.
However, the Ohio Attorney General's office has got a website that kind of provides for the scam du jour, if you will, and it includes cryptocurrency-related scams.
Yes.
Also, the Ohio Department of Commerce has a list of cryptocurrency kiosk and ATM companies, which I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Um,
Because, that's the registration, right, that they're required to do.
That's correct. And they're registered from all over the country, frankly. I got to tell you, I was amazed at the numbers within this Stillwater City ordinance that Keith sent us. $80,000 per complaint. If you believe that 5.6 million in losses or 5.6 billion in losses, having said that, then they kind of distilled it down to Stillwater, and they said that in Stillwater, there were over 30 virtual currency related scam reports with over 156,000 reported losses, which is 5,000 each. Jeez, I mean, I certainly see the issue. I guess the question is, what can we regulate or whether we should regulate, et cetera. And I don't have a good sense of it. It just seems like Norwood would be such a drop in the ocean that it would just,
True.
But it said,
The only ones I'm familiar with are the ATM. Yeah.
it said, in just the past few years, the Stillwater Police Department has experienced a drastic increase in these scams and are particularly concerned about the high dollar amounts of these losses. Currently, about 40% of Stillwater's population is over 50. Okay. Since 2023, the police department has responded to over 30 virtual currency related scam reports from Stillwater residents with over 156,000 reported losses. In one report alone, a victim had deposited over $5,800 into a virtual currency kiosk before the police department responded and stopped the victim from continuing to deposit additional funds. For what that's worth.
Right.
Yeah, and they capitalized this term virtual currency kiosks, which I guess means Bitcoin, basically. Not just Bitcoin,
Right.
but any cryptocurrency.
Yes. Because there are many now.
Right.
Yes.
So,
I mean, yes, I think we would be a drop in the bucket, but I don't know. In my mind, I think it's right, and I think someone should try to move forward on it, on trying to do something. I'm not one who's like, well, it's really hard, so we shouldn't do it. Right? Not that you're saying that. Not that you're saying that, Mr. Gary.
but they do have, I mean, I'm sure they've got definitions and stuff,
Yes, I think
which
like
might be somewhat helpful.
yeah, and yeah, here they have the virtual currency means a digital representation of value that one is used as a medium of exchange, unit of account, or store of value, and two is not money, whether or not denominated in money, and thus does not have legal tender status. Which that
Right.
actually makes sense to me
Sure.
from the little bit I know about Bitcoin. Even though I know isn't its value based on the US dollar? Right. Right, which I find fascinating. Sorry. Right. This is how I feel talking about the stock market, where I'm like, a lot of it feels imaginary.
It's virtual.
Yes.
That's the best.
Right. So hopefully 12 kiosks within Norwood would be enough for anyone who legitimately wants to use these machines. I would think that's plenty within a 3-mile radius until maybe hopefully someone with more regulating power than us.
When you say 3-mile radius, 3 square miles.
Excuse me, 3 square miles. I'm not good with my math terms.
Okay.
So I'm a lawyer.
More than that.
Excuse me, 3 square miles.
What would a moratorium look like?
I think we could do it similar to what we did with the vape shops, because I would say this is for public good, welfare, and safety of the community. And I don't know what the community would benefit from there being 12 more ATMs that do these functions.
So you'd regard it as kind of a zoning?
Is it similar to what we did with because I know we passed the moratorium, right, on the vape shops.
That's
That wasn't
right.
the zoning commission. So maybe we could do something like that, like a moratorium on the addition of registered ATMs. Virtual
Just
currency
while we
kiosks.
study the questions.
Huh?
Just while we study the questions. The
Yeah.
theory is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair? I mean, given the money that's being lost to these machines, even if we can't pin it down in Norwood, I think it's pretty significant.
I also think suggestive to council, and if council at large doesn't agree,
That's true.
that it won't pass.
Agreed.
I-
Okay, so we can
Thank you.
maybe we can talk about this more at our next meeting. I'll put it back on the agenda.
I would also maybe reach out to someone in the banking industry and ask them if the last thing you want to do is pass something and then find out that a lot of the major banks have plans to integrate some of this stuff. And then all of a sudden now you're in a pickle with banks not wanting to be here. That it might be wise to see if any of the
Yeah, we can double
players in the
check.
bank have plans because
I guess my thought is if they're an FDIC insured bank, I would be surprised if like they're right, like if they want to get involved in something that they can't insure. That's not insurable. Our country does wild stuff.
Their
Actually.
insurance covers your
Right,
assets deposited with them.
Right.
Only.
right.
Yeah.
All right, so they just don't care about other things.
They care, but if they're not, I mean, they're just being the middleman for the crypto, I would imagine. They're not.
Fascinating.
so we're not there yet.
They're just getting the fees.
I do think it's good.
But the climate nationally
Yes.
is more favorable for crypto being integrated into the banking system than it was a year ago. So, you know, all I'm saying is it might be wise to see our banks still, a year ago, banks were like, we don't want anything to do with this. That might be changing. And it might just be wise to.
All right, you can ask around. Sure. All right.
Sweet.
Wow, we're all done. That wasn't too long.
Hour and a half.
That's pretty good.
We want to schedule that meeting.
Yes.
Yes, let's
Scheduled.
schedule.
Oh yeah, let's schedule our next one.
Let me pull up my work schedule because that's the biggest beast of.
Thanks all three of you for coming, by the way. I appreciate everyone being here. We could do, so if our meeting's the 22nd,
I'm booked that whole week.
the whole week?
Meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to do, because my only thought is with the public information request, we probably want to have a meeting between council meetings. So do we want to do
I could do
The
Monday,
29th?
the 28th.
the 28th?
I could do the 30th, the 1st. I
Okay.
cannot do the 2nd. That's all Friday.
How about you? I'm wide open most of those days. So you guys,
I am not available in the evening that entire week except Monday and Tuesday.
No,
I
Monday.
work 1 p.m.
Okay, well, we
to
could do-
9 p.m.
I hate to bring you in on your day off, but are you available
I
on
do it
Monday?
every single week.
You do?
so, I mean, pretty much every time we have
I'm sorry.
meetings, they're
I've
on
been
the
trying
same.
not to.
It's okay.
Jeff, would the 28th work for you?
Yes.
Okay. 6 o'clock?
28th is.
I kind of
6
love getting
o'clock.
out in time to
Still
have
like
dinner.
I do
Yeah.
too. 6 o'clock is great.
Okay, great.
Law and Ord. 6 p.m. Done. It's on the calendar.
Perfect.
Groovy.
Okay, I think if we're all set, we can adjourn. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
If you want that ordinance back on the agenda, you need to do a committee report to report it out of committee
Okay.
back to council.
Okay.
If you have a form, fill it out and have everybody sign it now.
I don't think I have my key to get into the mailroom.
Oh, I do.
Someone else? Okay. I think I have reports in my book. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Moore. Okay. All right, now I think we're all done, Tyler.